to A Well-Designed Business. My name is Luann Nigara, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company WindowWorks from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. On today's Overheard episode, I am joined by Charles Pavarini III, Leyden Lewis, and Maria Viola Hi. If you haven't heard about this Overheard series yet, it's a special segment that's new to the show where I gather a roundtable of real-life experts to have open conversations about important topics to our industry. You know that feeling when you're at a conference or a market and you walk by a table and you think, oh, I would love to hear what they're talking about over there. Well, you're invited to the table to hear what they're talking about over there. In today's episode, it's kind of unique for A Well-Designed Business. We're talking about creativity. Now, if you've listened to the show for a long period of time, you know that my goal is not to teach you how to do the designing part of being a designer. My goal, in fact, is to teach you the business part of being a designer so that you get to do the designing part for as many years as it brings you joy and profitability, and so that it in turn creates the lifestyle that you desire for yourself. So to this end, I rarely talk about the creative process, and I almost never talk about the pretty. It isn't that these things aren't important to your business and to your career. They are actually incredibly important components of your success. It's just that I know that regardless of your level of capability on the creative and talented side, if you do not have the business side, the design side will always be a struggle. And I believe that with the right business structure in place, any one of you can be successful. Does that lean on an assumption that you have design chops? Yes, it does. Okay. And what is it that makes some spaces truly, unquestionably impressive? Is there a formula, a process, a system for developing that? Or is it innate? Well, today I turn to these experts to answer some of these questions. Maria, Charles, and Leyden aren't just simply exemplary creative designers who create stunning, impressive spaces with a level of attention to detail that I can hardly wrap my mind around, but they are all each also college-level design instructors, and they have had to find a way to teach creativity and bring it out of their design students. So, to this end, they've spent a great deal of time analyzing, defining, cultivating their own creativity and that of others. Now, before we dive into the conversation, I want to make sure you heard about the Jill Robeson Memorial Scholarship 2024, awarded by the WCAA, the Window Coverings Association of America. Okay? There will be 4 scholarships awarded, one in each category of window treatment workroom, interior designer, installer, and window treatment retailer. It is a $750 scholarship for each category, and the only criteria is that you use the $750 to further educate yourself in your business. Okay? That means you can use it for a Power Talk Friday event. You can use it for an exciting Windows conference. You can use it to go to High Point. You can use it if you're investing in a business coach. All right? So please go to WCAA.org to learn more. Also, the link will be in the show notes. All right. I'm super delighted to bring you this conversation with Leyden, Charles, and Maria. Well, I am so delighted to welcome these three very special individuals to a well-designed business today. I've had the pleasure of working with two of the three of them for a few decades here, off and on throughout the years. And of course, Maria and I have become good friends since I met her a few years ago. So great conversation. Excited to have it. Before we get to it, I'm going to give each of these lovely humans a moment to just introduce themselves in their own words and tell us a little bit about their business and what they do. So, Mr. Pavarini, would you start us off, please?
Thank you, Luann, and thank you for having all of us on this podcast. I'm Charles Pavarini III. I have the firm of Pavarini Design. I've been in business for more decades than I can really admit to, and we really focus on luxury interiors and lighting. And I just wrote a book on lighting. Lighting Beyond Edison, Brilliant Residential Lighting Techniques in the Age of LEDs. And I've found that LEDs are very, very tough to understand and to work with. They change our colors, etc., and we can adjust them to accommodate our interiors. And like I said, I've been in business for years. We have 35 design awards behind us, and we're just looking forward to doing more work.
I love it. I love it. Just before I let you guys also introduce yourself, off air, Leyden and Charles and I were explaining to Maria that we all met each other in the 80s. So there's that. Okay.
It's officially the 90s, Luann.
Oh, okay. I can tell you, I think it was the 80s. I'm just going to say. But anyway, okay, so Leyden, you tell us a little bit about yourself and your firm and your work.
Yes, hi, I'm Leyden Lewis. Leyden Lewis Design Studio is the name of my practice and business, and I have been in the interior design industry for over 30 years and with my own namesake firm for just over 20. At my studio, I would say we have three kind of categories: architectural design. We're not licensed architects, but we certainly do engage in whole house design, meaning that we start from the scratch on new builds for developers and also private clients. Interior design in the more traditional sense of keeping within the architectural boundary, and art, which is a really big passion of mine. And the curation of art within interiors is really, really, really important to me. I'm also the one of the founding members of the Black Artists and Designers Guild that began in 2018.
Love it. I love it. So I guess I do have to stand corrected. If you're in business 30, we did probably meet in the 90s, right? Okay.
You happen to have done the window treatments for me in my first when I did the Kips Bay Decorator show house in 1999.
Oh, wow.
Very nice.
Yes.
Okay, but we were working together before that,
Yes.
but not in your own firm when you were
Correct.
a project manager for another firm.
That is correct.
Okay, so it is the 90s though. And that's interesting because Charles, and we've done Charles Kips Bay projects multiple times when
Yes.
you've been in Kips Bay. So it's been
But we did meet in the 80s.
Yes, we did. You and I did. Yes, exactly. So I love that. I love that. Okay, and Maria, please introduce yourself to everybody.
Hello, I am Maria Viola Hi. My business is Viola Interior Design. We are in the Philadelphia area and Philadelphia suburbs, although we've done projects in different areas and states. We are a luxury design firm, and what I mean by that is because I feel like that's tossed around. So if I were to define that, it just means that we really try to do most things custom and customized, and we really feel that we are working on a concierge level for our clients. We are doing everything from picking the doorknobs to putting the glassware in the cabinets at the end of the project. And like Leyden, we are doing, we do a lot of new builds, we do a lot of renovations, and we do, if someone just simply wants us to do some soft furnishings for a room in totality, we will do that. But we really pride ourselves in being able to guide a client through an entire project from start to finish. I started in the design industry 20 years ago and have had my own business for about 15, 16 of those years. And, bones up,
Yeah,
worked bones up.
that's it.
So
Love it. I love it. And you know what's interesting is I know that Charles and Leyden, their firms are the same thing. Everything A to Z, soup to nuts. It's
Yes.
not, it's always that whole, every part of this is under their umbrella, just like it is yours. And that isn't the case with all design firms, but it is the case with the three of your firms. And
Yes.
of course, you guys, I know that from having done the different projects with you. So, okay. So here's the thing. Today, we're talking about creativity. We're going to have a little conversation about, I think I'm going to start with where does it come from? Because, how do I say this with political correctness? I'm not sure. I keep saying I'm going to say it in a nice way because I really do mean it nicely. I'm the outsider, right? Like we just established, been in the industry 1,000 years. But I don't design, right? I don't do what you do. And so to some extent, I am the observer, a very up close observer. And I know that what appears to be the most simple room that I could ever see on somebody's portfolio or an Instagram, I do not have any compunction whatsoever that I know I could not do that room. And I do know that simplicity is also hard to accomplish.
Yes.
Just if it might look like a white room with a sisal rug and a white sofa and a figgle tree or whatever the heck they're called in the background. And I know intellectually that could be as difficult to pull off as a more complicated. But my experience with you three is the layers and layers and like the number of times that I've been on the two of your projects, because that's the ones I've been on, where I'm just like, wait, over there is that? Like you look up and you're like, there's something there too. Or, like you'll walk in and I feel like you guys have often surprised me with, I'm thinking Leyden of I always call it the Dior fireplace. I have no idea. Like, was it Dior wall covering near a fireplace? Like, I can't remember. We're going back again to the 90s or whatever. And it was like, you pointing out to me that the shape of the fireplace, which had curves, by the way, was mimicked in the kitchen on the shape in the kitchen. And I'm just like, wait, what? And Charles, you and I'm like, wait, does it have to have that too? And you're like,
Yes.
it does. And I'm like, I could just finish the drape without that. It would be easier. He's like, who's talking about easier here? We're not talking about easier. And so it's like I said, there's just a layer. So where does this creativity come from? If you think about it individually, personally, it is being creative in creating simple beauty, but I witness in each of your work that extra above oomph. I don't know what it is. So who wants to start with that question? You're all looking at me.
I'm happy
Charles,
to, if
go
you
ahead,
want me
Maria.
to.
Go ahead, Maria.
I know for me, it is that I feel interior design should be about delight and studying the details. I know if I'm sitting in a space, I am looking at everything and I want my eye to land on things that interest me and delight me. And if I'm sitting in a totally monochromatic room, that is not necessarily going to happen for me. That's all. Again, there's a hat for every head. But I like to see that there's the swoop in this wallpaper. I go into another room and that was thought through and it appears in something else. That to me is like, that's what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be carrying it through, not in an obvious repetitive way. And certainly none of us are going to sit here and say a room should be cluttered and in your face. That's not good either. But my creativity stems from, like I said, delight in the details, and also just studying history and studying design history and traveling. I like to do a lot of traveling and just being so inspired by the thought process that has gone into the richness of certain interiors.
I feel like both you and Charles and Leyden have both said that exact sentence to me at some point in our conversations over the years. It's, sitting on the subway and seeing something, and you're just like, oh, that's the key to this thing that I'm working on, and blah, blah, blah. Right. So, Charles, talk about your sources of creativity and your feelings on it.
And that, what you just mentioned, Luann, about seeing something on the subway, it could be totally unrelated to what you're working on. And that inspiration just comes. And, I've been asked many times, where does your inspiration come from? And I find that it comes from within. We can study, and we could go to museums, and we can travel, and we can look in the subway, etc. But that inspiration, the final moment that creation becomes creative, I find it's from within the designer. And I think that the designer has something that the layperson does not have, is that creativity. And I find inspiration, and where I regenerate my inspiration is from nature. I go on a walk, I'll go paddle boarding, I'll let my mind at ease. And then when you can unclutter your head with specifics, that's when inspiration comes. And a lot of my inspiration will come when I've taken that walk, gone paddleboarding, kayaking, and then I go to bed. And the inspiration comes in the middle of the night. It just wakes me up. And, I think that creativity is something that needs to be nurtured also. And the more that we do, like Maria said, the more that we travel, the more that we look, and the more that we feel spaces, that's where creativity comes from. And Maria, you had mentioned that, in your design, you'll sit in a chair. What are you looking at? What is that room telling you? What is it doing to the viewer? And how we position rooms and finish rooms is that everywhere in the room, even if it's a plain wall, that plain wall, painted wall, has meaning to the entire room. And that is just a rest for the eye. But we make sure that no matter where you are in that room, that there is something there to engage you and to inspire the looker, the client.
Right. The experiencer.
Yes.
Right. And I love what you said, Charles, about the inspiration comes from within, because saying how it comes from noticing details, from art and from traveling and from the subway and all the things. But the within, what I'm hearing is, I could go to all the same places, but not having this level of creativity, I'm not going to then synthesize it. It's like, it's so funny because people who know me in my business, I'm always using this phrase, something happened here, something happened here, something happened here, something happened here. And then all of a sudden I get this light bulb aha moment. Mine is all related to creativity around business. It's like, oh, that's a way we could attack that. That's a way we could attack. And what happens is, when you said that, I could picture that's always happening. And my team, if they've heard it once, they've heard it 1,000 times. Remember in August when that thing happened, and then in November that thing happened, and then December, and none of them seem to be connected to each other.
Right.
They're all connected. Here's what we're going to do. And so you're like, I looked at the subway, I went out on the kayak, I saw a leaf, I did this, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, that's how we have to do the arch with over there. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Yes.
Right. Yeah. I love it. I love it. And Leyden, any thoughts to add on that whole conversation there before I direct this somewhere else?
I think that Charles and Maria have certainly summed it up. I would just add this. I feel as though we're kind of, to expand on what Charles was saying, from within also, it's like a vessel, like an instrument, and it's also a language. I think creativity is a language, right? And so we each, we all might be speaking English if creativity were English, but we all have different dialects, within that, and to appreciate. I think for me, I love like the Spanglish that's spoken by, let's say, a more Dominican population than the Puerto Rican population versus listening to pure Spanish that's spoken from Spain. Like even my interest in those kinds of specificity of things that I get in, that I sometimes kind of noodle over, they become a way of approaching, like, how are we going to sit on this couch? They sell 84-inch couches. They sell 72-inch couches. What if we made it 116? Like, how do you play an instrument of a couch length? You know what I mean? Within a space. So it's all of these things. Like, I might not know how to play the piano, but I'm interested in how we can play lyrically, musically, with space, visually, all to the supporting everything that Charles and Maria has already said. And I get stimulated from films, movies, travel, and I also need to isolate. I need to actually. I'm a big isolator. I have to admit
It's just
that.
white space in your brain, right?
I need to retreat.
The kayak space.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? From people and stimulus a lot of the time. And and a lot of people, I sometimes feel judged for doing it, but I actually have to pull back from the noise of engaging people in order for me to have that moment of rest, in order for me to express myself.
That is clearing the mind,
Yeah.
so that
Yes.
you allow that inspiration, that creativity to come through. And I'd like very much what you said, Leyden, about music. An interior is a symphony.
Mm.
And it has its highs, its lows, its legato. It has all of those aspects. And I look at an interior as a constellation of items that are revolving in this room, and in some manner, they have some type of relation to each other,
Yeah.
whether in that
100%.
space, it's etc. And I look at interiors very much in a musicality way.
Yes.
Yes.
I 100% agree.
I love it.
So have painters. And I mean, I think I definitely was taught to derive architectural composition from painting, and the painters that we were studying derived their compositions from music. So it's also a legacy of a practice and the way I was trained also.
Yeah,
Sure.
I love it. I love it. So going to how each of you have and continue and, various levels of your career teaching at the various interior design universities, regardless of whether the actual class that you taught at university was about quote unquote how to design, I'm sure you are influencers to the students that you've taught in the area of how to cultivate creativity. So I don't care if you're one of the classes you're teaching is business practices. In 3 to 6 months with students, you've got to have conversations about it. So just before I move into the next area of this conversation, talk to me, because when I'm hearing you each talk about the creativity and how important it is to you and where it comes from and how you cultivate it and how you pay attention to it, how do you express this importance or this path or this ideal to the generation of interior design students that come through you as you teach them? Any thoughts in that regard, any of the three of you?
When I begin a class and I teach residential design, I tell the students from the onset, I cannot teach you how to design. We can't teach how to design. What I teach is the elements to express your design. And that is a whole different way of thinking and teaching, because I can't tell students, I can't tell clients, etc., how to perceive design, but how to feel it and how to express it. And I think that's what teaching and design classes really do, is to allow you to release that inspiration and that creativity within yourself. I can't teach that. We can't teach creativity. That's got to
Right.
come from within.
And I think that also when you start teaching a class, you are encouraging the students to not be so constrained in their thinking, and you want them to, I say to them, go way out. I'll bring you back in if I need to. Just let the creativity run wild. And when they're first starting out in design school, they're like this. I'm tightening my hand as a symbol. And we have to sort of pry their fingers open and just receive the creativity that's already stirring inside of them, but they just don't know how to release it. And again,
Right.
what we're doing with that education as well is we're helping them understand how to put it into the actual design of a room. Okay, your concept is fabulous, it's wild, it's expressive, but now, like, how can we translate that into a space, right?
And
Because
and
that's
a,
what
Right.
we're doing.
and a space that clients can live in, walk through, relax in, and do everything that they do personally in the space.
Yes.
Needs to be accommodated by the design and the designer.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts, Leyden, for you on this?
No, I mean, Maria and Charles are killing it.
That's the
But
problem with three, right?
okay, I think one of the things that I offer when I'm teaching a class, and I teach a master's degree first years at New York School of Interior Design, and I just say, you guys got to get vulnerable, and
Yes.
everything think about what you've got to let that go, and you have to take
Exactly.
take chances. And the word actually, and I think, Luann, because this is so opposite to your business structure of your normal, I think the word shame. I think letting go and accessing shame in order to take chances, right? Because a lot of people are a little bit, they think they're shy, but they're actually more vulnerable about showing something that they're willing to express, right? Like, what if I took this black cobra and I put it next to this pinstripe zebra? And they're like, I don't think I've seen that on Pinterest or Instagram, right? So if I show it to them,
Right.
how will they react, right? And so that word, I think for artists, shame is a major component to getting beyond it and allowing yourself to express yourself and taking and being. I think the most creative people are the bravest people I know.
Right. It's
Yeah.
like
Yes.
what I'm
Yeah,
hearing you say is, especially for young design students, and even if you're
100%.
teaching master class level
Mm-hmm.
or master's level, they're still not seasoned. They're not
Well,
out there.
like, the reason I bring that up is because
Yeah.
many of them are second careers, and they're jumping from pre-med,
Yeah.
right, into like interior design, and there's a logic, there's a system, there's a formula
Yeah.
for accomplishing something, and here there isn't one per se.
Yeah.
And
And
so
they're going to
be
be
brave and trust
judged.
yourself,
And they're going to
right?
be
That's
judged.
what it's saying,
Gonna be
is
And
you're worried
judged.
about it being
right,
judged.
this whole idea of being judged is a
Yeah.
part of the reason why we do have as many white rooms with sisal floors in the fig plant.
That is
Just
so
saying.
true. And I always remind our students, like Leyden was saying about when he was using the example of the cobra and the zebra stripes, and I'm not seeing that on Pinterest or Instagram. It's because what social media is filled with are images that the mass public can
Mm.
understand and make
Yes.
sense of quickly.
And have anointed through likes.
And yes,
Yes.
Right,
correct.
Yes.
right.
And it's
Yeah,
digestible and in some respects attainable instead of aspirational.
exactly.
So if they think to themselves, I could do that. So we probably all three of us say to our students, don't worry about that. This is not about how many likes you're getting. This is about
Exactly.
designing what is true and
What,
what is true to you and your client.
and I think that is an absolute reality that was not in place then when the three of us were maybe being trained as creatives. Like
Correct.
that particular
Yes.
thing that of social media was not in our way.
Right.
Right.
Correct.
And so I feel very blessed to have been born before
Me too.
that kind of
Pressure.
assimilation and pressure
Yeah.
has been is which is
You
part
know,
of
I
everyday
I
life now.
think that referring back to Pinterest, that is not true inspiration. That is looking that is looking more to copy what's been done.
100%.
Yeah.
And the student needs to find their own center in design. And that's why I keep on going back to the inspiration and the creativity coming from them. Just recently in class at Parsons, we laid out a living room. Every student had a sofa with two chairs and two side tables. And I told them, I said, throw that concept out. And if you were to design a room or to place furniture in a room that's other than the typical way, how would you approach it? How would you do it? How would you show it to me?
Right.
And they did. Many of them let that go, and then it was amazing what was produced because they
See, that to me is literally roping back to what Layden said, right? You're saying, because when you were talking, Layden, about not having the shame and having the courage,
Yeah.
right? It's like I was hearing in myself, is like, this is the place to do that. This is the place, because if I have courage in like the pinstripe with the leopard or whatever it was, and now, Charles, you're reinforcing it. If I have the courage to design a living room that isn't two sofas, two lamps, two tables, and a love seat, right? Like, what I'm hearing is, this is the laboratory.
Right.
Do it here.
Right.
Push the boundary. I might look at it as your instructor and say, well, actually, that doesn't work. That's crazy. And that's not practical, or whatever the thing is. But what I'm hearing from you guys is, your students don't ever get to the point where they might get beyond what's on Pinterest if they don't have the safe space and the nudging from you guys to push through it.
100%.
Right?
and if they produce something and I look at it and I say that doesn't really work, I ask them to go back, make it work.
Yeah.
Make it work, and to push their mind into more of a creative space. And Luann, you just mentioned something about a laboratory. That's how I approach show houses. I think show houses are a designer's laboratory. That's where we could take materials, use them in a different way. It's not for a client. We're the client. And we can creatively work that and not be shameful of what we're doing, but to put it out there as an experiment.
Right.
that is a
Regardless of how
laboratory.
much torture it is for your window treatment professional, that doesn't matter.
That's beside the point.
But in fact, it's actually too torture than to our window treatment person. Right.
Yeah,
Uh,
literally, like
right.
literally. That's because when you said that, I'm like, of course, I know that to be true. You're like, we've never tried this before. Let's do it here. I'm like, okay, the whole world's looking, and we have 3 weeks to do it too. Oh no, I love it. I just love it. I mean, it's just so good. So now turning back to work that you each do with clients. All right. So, Leyden, you start us off. How do you strike the balance as an interior designer? Now you're back talking to your peers as opposed to, well, we were always talking to peers, trying to get them to get their creative juices going deeper and bring more of themselves to it. But we have your colleagues listening that are like, well, how do you strike the balance between your personal creative vision and the needs or preferences of the client, whether that's the client doesn't get it or the budget doesn't allow or whatever it is? Talk to me a little bit about that dynamic.
I think I'll answer it in a couple ways. I think that my clients, my interiors, hopefully are some degree of a reflection of my clients, right? Like that's a part of the puzzle and the creativity around the language business. Like, what language do they speak? So, like, in doing that, I'm able to, like, if the longer you spend time with a client, that intake form is a little tricky because it doesn't quite get the client. So it's spending time with them. It's hopefully breaking bread with them and all that stuff and seeing what's going on there. And then you get you're able to then give them, reflect back to them in design solutions what you observe about them in life. So I someone wants to have storage. What kind of storage? What are we hanging? Like, we just did this. I've been in love with this idea of creating this pegboard, this sexy pegboard idea, for a long
There's
time.
2 words you never hear together.
I just have to say, sexy pegboard.
No, but
That is so the epitome of the show.
It's cork. It's cork covered. It's stained cork with these maple dowels, and it's hanging their bikes. The entire room is clad in cork except for one elevation. It's the mud room for this townhouse, but I wanted it to be sexy. And
Yeah.
and
See, the rest of us go to Home Depot and buy racks. This is what I'm talking about. This is exactly what I'm talking about.
We made these dowels, and the kids are putting their bikes in their helmets, and they're arranged in such a way so it's both. It's where art meets practicality.
See, that is the moment right there that I have been on both of your projects. This is exactly what I'm talking about, where I walk in, I see a pegboard. I don't see sexy pegboard. I just think pegboard, right? And then I'm like, wow, you did a pegboard in cork and maple? Yeah. All right. The rest of us garden variety humans go to Home Depot.
Sorry, walnut.
Yeah. But then here's the moment that each of you have had, that I've had with each of you in a project. Then I'll be standing there, and then you'll say, and if you step back and look, the arrangement of the pegboards creates an XYZ, which you've repeated over here in the kitchen. And I'm just like, we just went down the crazyville now. Yeah. We really did. Yeah. You know what I mean? But that is that thing, like when Maria was saying, like the curve in the wallpaper in one room is the curve in another room. Like, that's what you guys do. It's crazy pants.
And the point, and I think you wanted to answer a question about, also address the question about budget.
Yeah,
around that. I think.
How do you convince somebody they need a sexy pegboard with walnut things?
I think the other part of it is, like, I think there's always an answer. If we needed to reduce that to plywood and pine pegs, that would have been the solution too. You know what I mean? Like, I don't judge because I'm creating. I always know that there's always an allotment of a percentage of a budget where people have assigned a certain amount of value to the mudroom versus the formal living room, right? Like, and the dining area. So as practitioners, we learn what becomes more important to a client.
That's right.
And
Okay.
and you
Well,
and you and you and you put those values in terms of material and details, accordingly.
what we do is we create lifestyle by doing that pegboard where they hang their bike up. That is creating a lifestyle for the children. That's
Yeah.
what you do with your bike. And that lifestyle is, as you said, Lewin, we listen to the client and we augment their already lifestyle, and we have to observe that in order to augment the lifestyle through creative solutions.
Right.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing too in what you said, Layden, is from a completely like not making fun standpoint, but the truth is like if you're going to quote unquote value engineer your sexy pegboard, you're not going to the pre-made rack. You're like, hey, I can kind of still get this feeling, this thing with plywood and this. Like, there's I love that you're not, well, hey, it's my way or the highway. They have to just pay more money. That's not realistic. Most
No.
people cannot
No,
function in that
no.
world, and you have no desire to. But what I heard is there's always another creative solution. We just don't
100%.
throw the baby out with the bathwater and run off to Home Depot,
Yeah,
Well,
right?
if
100%.
you took a room and gave it to 10 designers, creative designers,
Yep.
you will get back.
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
100%,
Yes.
100%. Maria, any thoughts on this, balancing creative and budget and preferences and so forth with that
Yeah,
with
I mean, you
clients?
just have to have a conversation with the client. And look, I'm going to be perfectly frank here. If everybody wants every room in their whole house to be plywood, I'm not their designer.
No,
Correct.
none of
However,
you are.
if I need to switch gears for one of the spaces, I will do that.
Yes.
Mhm.
So it's a balance. It just has to skew, mostly in a certain way. But as creatives, it's our job to come up with solutions that are
Well,
sometimes economical.
budget
You know,
budget doesn't mean that there's a lack or increase in creativity.
Right.
right? I've seen, very high end residences that are not creative, actually.
Right,
Correct.
right.
So
I think
Let's
Maria,
just call it like it is,
I would
Maria.
I would agree with you. Mostly they are not creative because they are. I think there's a lot of what I believe people think is creative is actually a collection of curated expensive stuff.
mm,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
That's
You know what
well,
I mean?
and it's funny because I've often, said it on the show. We have the whole like concept of high-low design, right? And you have the concept of you could go into Home Goods and you guys, you three probably actually don't have any Home Goods products in your projects. Okay. However, if each of you, I know for a fact, if you had to, if you say you were doing a Home Goods commercial and you had to go into Home Goods and you had to place, 10% of the accessories in a home in Home Goods, you could do it. And my thing is there's that level of I walk into Home Goods and I see a bunch of tchotchkes on shelves. Like I cannot find the thing that if you take it out of here looks amazing. Whereas you guys have that ability. And so I love the not throwing the creativity away just because the budget had to be reduced. You will find another way to do it that is elevated,
mm,
Yes.
right? It's like that sort of
Yeah.
a thing.
Yes.
Budget doesn't mean creative at
Yeah.
all.
Right. High budget doesn't mean creative and low. Like to your point,
Right.
Layden,
Right.
it's not just a bunch of expensive things. You
Right.
know why they're
that's
there.
right.
What I feel like what I've noticed with you guys is there's I mean this it's hard to talk in absolutes because I don't know if it's true, but I don't feel like anything in any of your rooms is ever there by accident. Like
That's
I don't
intentionality.
That's what I'm saying,
100%.
though. It's not like, oh, and by the way, I need a thing for that corner.
Yeah.
That's good enough. Get my assistant to go find something. And yeah, that's good enough. Like, I don't, like, I feel like everything the way you each approach design, well, I don't know which one of you said it. It's like every viewpoint that you sit it in the space. It's like,
Yes.
I sit in this chair. What do I see? Right, Charles? I think you
Yes.
said it. What do I see in this view? It's not like, oh, that's a corner that doesn't matter.
Well,
Right?
and when I'm trying to explain that to a client, like if I sense they're starting to wane and maybe they're getting their head spinning or they're getting a little burned out, I'll say to them, let's stop here and we'll revisit. Or I will say to them, look, everything has to have a thoughtful approach. We don't want anything in this space to look like it was an afterthought or we
Yeah.
just
Correct.
said, all right, well, whatever. I mean, that's not why we're here
I think,
as professional interior designers.
right. I think that, and I'll be bold and speak for the three of us, everything that we place in a room has some type of purpose, whether it's a visual purpose to enhance the rest of the space, as I was saying, a constellation of items in a space, or a function of purpose in a space. And I think that's how we determine the items that go into a space. Is it enhancing visually, and will it enhance the visual experience of the space, or is it a functional matter?
Right.
That is the exact description that you just said, Leyden. It's not just a room of curated, expensive things.
100%.
That's
And
exactly the same sentence,
I
right?
think Charles is speaking about emotions, right? For
Yes.
me, I think that nothing. I mean, my favorite building in the world is the Pantheon in Rome. And the first time I went to see it when I was 24 years old, I walked in there, and I'm not a religious person. I'm a very highly spiritual person, but something happened to me. Right, like something was happening.
You got a thunderbolt, one of the
Something was
gods.
happening.
Bang.
And all I've been trying to do ever since 1994 is recreate those moments and little tidbits and hors d'oeuvres and full meals for my clients. Like
I love
if
it.
they can, if I can give them that
Mhm.
feeling of something somewhere between here and there, let's say that's
Yeah.
something the divine or something that takes us out. I think Charles's walks in nature. Maria talked about all the traveling, something that takes us away from being present, but
Mhm.
also reinforces it. You know what I mean?
Mm, mm,
Yeah, I think that's what I've been looking to achieve. I always
yeah.
that's my main objective
Yeah.
when I do my work.
I love it. I mean, so here's the thing. When I think about a colleague listening that is maybe earlier in their journey and they are totally like, yes, this is me. This is how I look at it. Like, Pinterest is not inspiration. Like right? Pinterest is a search engine. Okay,
Exactly.
that's what it is.
Exactly.
You need a lamp, go find it on Pinterest. Okay, but like really, right? Okay, so but like say you guys are touching the heart and soul of somebody listening. What is it in the beginning? So, in the beginning, it's unlikely, and I have interviewed designers that just start out with the big budgets. And when they do, it's usually because they came from a big firm and I'm not recalling if each of you I don't Leyden, you didn't come from a big firm. Charles, you had an original partnership, I think that was a bigger
I
firm.
did,
I
but
can't
I
remember.
spent 2 years with Ruben de Saavedra.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's usually where some of this comes from, right?
Yes.
So, but my thing is, forget all that. You still are starting on your own. If we go back to each of yours first clients in the first, say, 2 years, I think, Leyden, you mentioned it when I said, how do you balance the thing with the client? And you're like, at this point, aren't you sort of attracting the client who knows what they're getting when they come to you? They're not coming with, a line item budget thing, like not 20 cents there, $25 there, right? But in the beginning, I want to know, and I'm going to make a leap. I've never asked any of you this, but is it that in the beginning, if say that original budget is 5,000, that now might be 50,000, or is 50,000 and might be 500,000? did you always still take this approach? Everything in this room has a reason. Everything here is thought out. And instead of being a $40,000 sofa, it might be a $2,000 one. But is that the path for somebody listening? Or is it put the design out there, get it going, and then because I feel like you can't do that. You have to start out with this thought, don't you?
I
Do you know what I'm asking, actually?
I I I think I know what you're asking.
Right? It's a lot of words. I'm not sure I made any sense.
But that $2,000 sofa can look
Yeah.
in the room
Yes.
just like the $5,000 sofa if it's placed right and you have the right items around it. It could
Right.
look more than it is. And my experience is with clients, once they start seeing how the interior is developing, they will increase because they want more, they want better, and they want it to look better and
Okay.
feel better.
Mm,
Because, as Leyden said, it is an emotional profession.
mm,
Yeah.
No matter how we cut it, it's how that person in that room feels about themselves and about others that are in the room or sharing that space with them. And Leyden, you mentioned the Pantheon. I find architecture very emotional.
Yes, I
yeah,
would
Very
agree with that.
emotional.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Luann, I think for somebody that's in their earlier years, and to address that question that may tie closer to budget, I think as a designer, it's your responsibility to also, something's got to be special. Like I'm reflecting on a room I did for somebody early on after I broke out on my own. And while they didn't have a huge budget for all the furniture pieces, I made sure the window treatments were fantastic.
Yay.
Uh,
Thank you.
and that meant like
Yeah,
a
I
beautiful
agree.
fabric, because what I say to clients is otherwise you can, and if you need to cut this out, you can cut it out. If you need to go to Pottery Barn and just want everything to be somewhat bland, there are designers there that can do that for you. No disrespect to Pottery Barn, but you don't need to hire a professional designer, because what we're striving to do, there's many things we're striving to do, but one of those things is to make it different than any other house on your block. It is
Right.
our job so that there is something happening in this room that is special.
And
And if your budget doesn't allow for everything, well, then I'm going to pick something, and it might be the window treatments, or it might be that fantastic coffee table that is like unbelievable,
or the rug or the
right?
chandelier,
And-
some element,
And
right?
I think that also, to interface what you're saying, Maria, is that something in the room that feels very personal to the client, because then they feel an emotional attachment to the room and how the room feels, because there's something of theirs or of their liking personally that is in that room.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
right.
So this is like a personal question, but I'm curious, Leyden, that one job in
In
I can't where was it?
Prospect Park West.
Yeah.
Prospect Park
And
West.
you had the curvy kitchen and
Yes.
all that thing.
Yes.
Where did the curvy thing come from? Was that born out of something with that client, or was that just to make the space feel better and they loved it? Because you have to see this job. It's crazy pants. Like, it's nuts. And by the way, Charles has a curvy thing that he made me do in Florida too that I could talk about. But
You know, the client is no longer with us. She was 92 years old when
Wow.
she
Yeah,
started the
that was
project.
years
Oh
ago.
my gosh.
And she lived to thank God she got to live in the apartment for 2 years after it was completed. And I wanted soft to
Yeah.
be her experience of the kitchen. So many, and I just didn't want, she was fragile, and and I wanted her to even in this hard place. The kitchen could be a hard place,
Very
and
much.
Yeah.
I wanted it to be a soft engagement.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
all I
And
will. Yeah,
that's interesting.
yeah,
I always wondered, and I don't remember asking you during the process, but now that you say that she was elderly, I remember that, and I remember the accommodations that you were making in the primary
exactly.
bath so that she could get in, but still not make it look like
An
a
institutional ADA
yes.
bathroom,
Yes, yes,
right?
yes, yes.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and Charles, the curvy thing that I remember with you is in the project down in Florida. And guys, literally, this is what happens. I fly down to Florida. I walk in. He's like, "All right, let me tell you what we want to do here." And he walks me in this room, and he's like, "I need a Roman here. I need a this," and it's all going fine. He goes, and then we walk into this huge, massive combination, like great room area. I don't even remember how big it was. And he's like, "Here, I want like it to feel like a sheer drape is just like flowing through the space." And he's like, and we're looking at like 40, I don't know, 40, 50 feet one way and 30, 40, 50 feet the other way. And he's like, so like one rod would be a big S here. And then you'd like take another
Go,
S here.
go.
And it's like, was it like 16 feet tall ceilings or something? And I'm like, I got to put this on a plane? Like, what are you kidding me?
I actually want to answer this question for Charles. I love to push the vendors.
Oh, he
Yes.
killed both of you
Like-
and pushed me
like-
out of my brains.
I mean, I think Luann, you're particularly interested because you show a curiosity to what your designers are doing as opposed to being an executioner, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah. Oh, I love
literally,
working with you guys,
and figuratively. so like I think one of the things that was great working with you is that when you define, we're only as good as also our musicians in that concert.
Yes.
Right.
Like, and so the orchestra is really important. So I salute you, Charles, and push Maria,
Well,
push.
you know, a lot of times when we come up with a concept, an idea, I find that I want to break the feeling of the architecture. I don't want the architecture to dictate the space. I want the space to enhance the architecture.
Right.
And
the same with making the kitchen curvy. It's like, we
yes,
don't want a boxy kitchen. How are we going to make it
right.
not boxy? It's still a boxy kitchen, but now it's not. Yeah. No, that was insane. That was total insanity. And I'm just like, and then like, let's cut it into the ceiling so we don't see the track. And I'm just like, come on with this. Right. And that's like Leyden. Remember?
I like these budgets.
Right? But how about Leyden? Remember Central Park West, was it, that you're like, oh, I want to do a room divider in this, it was an apartment, but you gutted it, I feel like, to like a loft or something, if I remember. And you're like, I have this salvage piece of like fence, metal fence that I want you to hang here. And I'm like, wait, what? And he's like, and it's like, I don't know, 10 feet by 12 feet. I'm like, and he's like, and you have to remember it's about 700 pounds. And I'm like, I have to remember that part. Like, are you kidding me? And he's like, so I don't know how Billy's going to make it hang and not like pull the ceiling down. I'm like, I don't either, buddy. I'm like, they make chain drapery. Can we just do a metal chain drapery? And his face, he just looked at me. He's like, why? I'm like, you're right. Why? And so I have appreciated, because working with designers like the three of you, I make all the jokes about you drive me to drink and all this stuff, but it's fun and it's engaging. It's terrifying. It's literally terrifying to consistently do something no one has ever done before and hold your fingers that you don't get the phone call on the install from Billy, that like, it didn't work. You know what I mean? But it's exciting. And Maria, I know that you work with Vita, and Vita is also top shelf executor with window treatments and just has an eye to detail and quality control, right?
Right. And what I was going to say is, Luann, thank goodness you are not afraid of that. The better fabricators and contractors are the ones that, even if they don't say yes right off the bat to a crazy idea, they're willing to have a dialogue about it. Because I've worked with contractors that would shut me right down.
Right.
No, what? We can't do that. No.
Yeah.
No. that's not who should be working with designers, because
No.
go
When
work with whatever, but don't work with designers. So kudos to you for saying, okay, Leyden, we'll hang a fence from the ceiling, and
Well,
we'll make it work. We'll figure it
right.
out.
well,
Well, and I will say, I just want to throw it back to these two guys. They never said a crazy thing and then said, go figure it out. Come back to me with the solution. They both were always very much part
Involved.
of,
Hmm.
yes,
Yeah.
like, well, okay, we are going to have to support this 700 pounds. Like, how can we do it so
right.
I can live with it, or as aesthetically, you can do it? But like, they were never just like, go away and get me a solution. And so it might not be fully baked. I might have to take everything that they suggested and then go to Billy and be like, dude, Houston, we got problems.
When
We got to
Right.
figure it out. And Billy, by the way, to your point, Maria, if Billy were just the guy involved, he would have much more been like,
Right.
And I'm always like, no, but Billy, what if there's no? And he's
Right.
like, Lou, this, I'm like, no, pretend there's no, Bill. Pretend there's
Yeah.
no.
That's a
And
great
that was
attitude.
my
Amazing.
thing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
when I hear from a vendor and I come up with some type of idea, concept, and present it to them, and they come back to me and say, well, it can't be done. I said, I totally understand that. I appreciate that. But let's discuss how it is going to get done.
That's right, because it's
Mhm.
going to.
Right. It's gonna happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and those things have been they have been incredibly rewarding working with creative people like yourself that do want to. It is terrifying. There's no question, and it is stressful. I'm like not joking about that part, really.
Sure.
But because your standards are so high and the projects are so elevated, this is not, let's throw the spaghetti at the wall. This is like, you're charging $1 billion. I'm charging you $1 billion. And sweetie, this, Leyden, and I'm just laughing. I remember the first time when motorization came out. So it was just coming out. It was just, blah, 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 getting going. And you keep saying to me during the project, well, I need this to that and need this to that. And I'm literally swimming over my head. And I know you guys, and I will be real with you, but there's a certain level where you're like, you can't tell them you really don't know anything about this. Like, you're the expert in the room. And so I'm like, yeah, I'm understanding. Like, oh, yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, holy crap. Like, wow. And the thing is, finally, at one point, you just said no so nonchalantly. This is going back 15 years, maybe more. You're like, because my client wants to operate these shades when he's in, I don't know, it was South Africa or somewhere. Was it South Africa? Yes, he wants to be able to open and close them when he's in South Africa. And I'm just like, what? And I like, literally, this is where I'm grateful that I have the relationship. Because then I'm just like, I'm like, what you talking about, Willis moment. I'm like, wait, Leyden, why does somebody need to operate their shade?
Because they can.
Well, and I remember you also saying, but here's what you say. You say with complete calmness, as if it is the most normal thing in the world. And you said to me, and I remember it as I'm standing here, you said to me, well, Lou, there's sometimes when he has guests that will use his apartment when he's not in town, and he wants to make sure upon their arrival that the home is welcoming. So he has all the shades put up as they come in, and they see all the beautiful views of the river. And I'm just like, okay, let's just get back to the details here. Like, come on. I literally am like, I get to have your apartment on the river in New York City over by the embassy, United Nations where it was, right? And I'm going to think less of it if it's dark when I come in. Stop. Right? Like, nope, dead serious. We're all dead serious now. Let's just keep figuring out this motorization. So fun, so crazy. But I will say, for all of you listening, do not underestimate this tapping into your creativity and taking a page from each of these individuals' design books, because you are all incredibly creative and inspiring, and you are always pushing yourselves out of your boundaries. And it is an absolute joy and delight to be in that team and in that realm and watch your brains click. So I appreciate you guys coming today. And I will just say, if anybody has a final thing that they want to just say to wrap up, please feel at free to give the message to students, to colleagues, to vendors. If you have a final thought, please go ahead and share it.
I do have a final thought, and I didn't touch on it too much during this discussion, but lighting is so
It's so
critical
true.
It is.
to an interior.
Yeah.
It will make the interior sing. And so many designers, and I see top designers. I see Kips Bay rooms, beautiful, beautiful rooms, poorly lit. And after quite a while seeing this, I thought, I need to write a book on this.
Yeah.
So,
And you excel there. You really do. And the thing is, what's so funny is I've said on the podcast multiple times, I do not care how amazing the service is at a restaurant and how good the food is. If the lighting's there, I'm not going back. And you'll be like, oh, that was so
Exactly.
good. When I go back, and I'll be like, no, the lighting stinks. He's like, wait, that was like the best meal we had in like 6 months. I'm like, yeah, but the lighting stinks. Like, I can't stand it.
Right.
I can't stand. I don't want to be. When I'm in a space, the right lighting makes you feel prettier. It just does.
Of course.
Well, it's as important as form, color, texture, if not more important. And designers need to think about the lighting before the room is completed.
Yeah, love it. Love it. Any final thoughts from either of you, Maria or Leyden?
I mean, I would just encourage everybody to find those quiet moments and get off of their phones and social media. I sound like a mother now. But I do worry about that because I think, when I was young, there were days that I was bored out of my mind, and my mother would say, "You're bored? I'll give you something to do." It was usually something that I didn't want to do. So I did not complain about being bored. But what that allowed me to do was think and be super creative and just let my imagination. I mean, I spent so much time daydreaming and creating things in my brain constantly since I was a child. So, but you need that empty space to do that, as both Charles and Leyden have said earlier.
And you need to continue daydreaming.
Yes.
Yeah. I would just remind everyone that I love what you said, Luann. It's and Charles. It's an emotional business. It is. It's emotional and unfortunately sometimes too psychological a business. Where we have to make so many considerations, but not let that not get in the way of expressing yourself creatively and honoring yourself as a creative and making sure that your part is played out, as an artist within your interiors.
Yes.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Oh my God. I knew this was going to be a good show. I'm just saying. Don't mind me saying it out loud. Okay. This was so fun. Thank you so much for being here with me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
The more I listen to the way that Leyden, Charles, and Maria spoke about creativity and design, the more I realize that it isn't that different from the type of creative brain, that I have or that others have, right? It's different in a way that the talent comes out. Let's be clear on that. I can't imagine a world where I could even begin to think about and do the things that they do or you do in regard to design. Finding the details in the shape of a fireplace that mimics the wallpaper in the bathroom that ties back to the curvature of a lamp in the bedroom. Oh, no, ma'am. No, sir. Too much happening there for me to grasp, right? But this relationship between creativity and connection is something I actually do understand. It's an ability to see things in a way that others always and sometimes cannot, okay? To find the patterns and connections and opportunities. And I feel like that's what I do in business, right? Picking up a thread here and something there, and then all of a sudden, bang, there's the big idea that makes sense. I love that Maria suggested when you are trying to accomplish this in your creative space, in your creative world, in the way that it comes out of you, that you find a place to get quiet. She says it's important, especially in this world where we're always so connected to everyone and everything all the time. I know for me, the moments to clear my head and get creative happen when I'm walking on the beach. away from all the distractions. I always say to myself, oh, I'm going to go, and just like, I'm not going to work now, quote unquote. And what's so crazy is that's when all the ideas bubble up. But it's to Maria's point. The brain is clearing. It also happens for me in the car. Lord knows my team's Voxers get on fire when I have a long drive to or from to the beach, right? It's just, it's giving the white space for things to flow in. And it's important that you do schedule that in, that you do make time for that. Otherwise, it's just one big hamster wheel, and maybe you're missing some real creative genius and talent that has yet to be explored in you, right? Each of these designers that were on the show with me today are true artists. I want you to stop and think about the way they spoke about creativity. It's different than the way most think about it. You can hear for them, it's a critical part of their day, for their life. It's serious. They're actually driven by it. It's much more than the coordination of colors and patterns. Not that there is not a skill to that's for sure. But for each of them, each project, each space, they bring that full, careful thought, intention, and meaning to every detail that they put into a room. It's remarkable, and I said it throughout the show. I've witnessed it firsthand with them. It's incredible. If these friends of mine, Leyden, Charles, and Maria, are new to you, I encourage you to go and look at their websites and put into context what they have been talking about here. Okay? We've been taught this whole left brain, right brain idea forever. Some of us are creative, artsy thinkers. Some of us are analytical, engineer type, right? But the thing that was interesting also in this conversation is when you hear the three of them talk about their approach to creativity, it is that stereotypical idea of gaining inspiration and using the intuitive side of things, but it is also actually quite analytical. It is their awareness to the attention to detail in an extreme way that they incorporate into their big vision that truly complements that right brain half of their process, right? I think the big idea to hang on here too is it's not accidental. It isn't luck. It's deliberate, and it's special. This conversation relates back to my conversation way back episode with Darryl Long and his opinions on Pinterest. And he pointed out that real design comes from within, from visiting a museum or looking at a brushstroke pattern on a painting or capturing the feel of a landscape or nature. It's interesting because the show is not live yet. It'll be coming up next month. But I just today had an interview with Vincent Wolf, and literally, he picks up this exact same thread, having no prompt from me to doing it. This passion for making sure that you are coming to your design with a point of view, something that's in you, something that you think about, that you relate from different parts of your life and bring together in your design. Okay? I thought it was interesting, too, that Charles, Leyden, and Maria all said the same thing, that they were grateful that they became designers before the days of Pinterest or Instagram. But interestingly, in the conversation with Vincent, and when you hear it, he says, look, there were always magazines. It isn't just the digital age. You always had the opportunity to copy. You always had the responsibility to create, okay? So I want you to understand how this ties back into the business part of your design firm, okay? This level of creativity directly reflects the value that you bring to your clients. And you heard them. It's not about the budget. Yes, if you have a bigger budget, you can utilize bigger ideas and you have more freedom to create every single thing that your brain can come up with. But you can and you must bring this same level of detail and attention to your creativity, even with the smallest budget, okay? Like Maria said, sometimes that's just picking one thing that means the thing that brings the context to the entire space. Because you see, this is what your clients cannot do for themselves. This is what AI cannot do for anyone. Okay? Clients can look on Pinterest and pick out sofas and tables. They might even be able to put together a fairly nice room. But to tell a story with detail, to incorporate that vision from any place you stand in a room or a home, to find creative solutions that are not just visually appealing, but also support the lifestyle and the function and the form, okay? And to weave all the little strings together, that is interior design. That is skill blended with talent. That is your sweet spot. And that is what you need to stand in when you are having these conversations with your clients about why should they hire you. But you need to know that you stand in that spot, right? You need to know. And that takes practice. That takes honing your creativity, just like these guys said. All right? And when all of this comes together, it's reflected in your rates. It's reflected in your confidence. It's reflected in the way you view your own value as a designer. When you defer to objections or lowering your rates or questioning your own worth, you are the one doing yourself a disservice. Anyone can ask anything of you. It doesn't mean you say yes. And when they ask it, it doesn't mean that that now determines your value. Okay? What you have invested in yourself, in your knowledge, your business, your creative skills, it is reflected in the way you think about yourself compared to other designers and the way you position yourself in your marketing. It's reflected in your productivity. It's reflected in your creativity. It's reflected in your profitability. It's reflected in every aspect of your business, right? And if you want to be successful in this career, in this field you have chosen, you need to take that creativity that you possess and make sure you are executing it at your highest possible level. The highest possible level for you. Don't look left and right. Just look straight ahead in the mirror and ask yourself, am I doing everything and anything to cultivate the highest level creativity in me, period? Okay? You cannot phone it in. You cannot phone in design. You cannot phone in your plans and all the things and then blame AI for stealing your living. You just can't. When you combine your highest, most creative thinking and attention to detail into the design with the same creativity and attention to the business side, well, that, my friend, is a formula for a well-designed business. This is great, big, important stuff to think about. And I am so grateful for the insights that Leyden and Charles and Maria shared with me and you today. So join me in thanking them, all right? Reach out to them either on the post on Instagram, in the Luann Nigara and Friends Facebook group, however you want to do it. But if any one of them said something that inspired you or moved you, I'm sure they would appreciate hearing that from you. Thank you for listening. Decide to be excellent. Thank you for joining me today. This podcast is a production of Luann Nigara, Inc. If you want to know more about me, my books, or Luann University, go to luannnigara.com. And if you are interested in having WindowWorks help you with your next window treatment or awning project in the New York, New Jersey metro area, go to windowworksnj.com to learn more. Have an excellent day.